What's going on, y'all? It's your man Supreme, and welcome back to The Real Rap Show. And this is episode 45 of The Real Rap Show, the story of Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. Now, before we get this episode started, I would like to say thank you to everyone who has been tuning in to The Real Rap Show since day one. Everyone in the comments, and also everyone that gives me great feedback about the show. Now let's get this started. In the early 1980s, Fat Cat was one of the biggest drug dealers in New York City. You had guys like Rich Porter, Alpo, and Day-Z. There was Supreme and the Supreme Team, and you had Fat Cat. You can't mention drug kingpins in New York and not mention Fat Cat. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1958. When he was 10 years old, him and his family moved from Birmingham, Alabama to Queens, New York City. When Fat Cat was 18 years old in Queens, he got arrested for committing 2 armed robberies and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. During his prison sentence, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols met a dude that went by the name of Pappy Mason, but you'll hear more about him later on in the story. Fat Cat did about 2.5 years in prison, and in 1980, he was granted parole. The year was 1983, going into 84, and Fat Cat was now one of the biggest drug dealers in New York City. Now, remember the dude Pappy Mason? Well, he gets out of prison around 1984-1985 and links up with Fat Cat on the streets of Queens, New York, and started doing security for Fat Cat and his drug crew. Now, back in the 1980s, there also was a lot of vicious and dangerous Jamaican dudes that was getting money too on the marijuana side of things. If you guys can remember the 1980s, the Jamaican dudes wasn't playing no games. It was a lot of Jamaican dudes that was making a lot of noise in all parts of New York City. And a lot of big-time drug dealers knew not to mess with those Jamaicans. Like I said, the Jamaicans controlled the marijuana. There was some that was into the crack game, but they mostly ran the marijuana thing. But there was some of them that actually partnered up with the crack dealers in the neighborhood. And what began to happen was, see, the Jamaican dudes was making money selling weed, but they wasn't making the kind of money that these big-time dealers was making selling crack. So these big dealers, they would hire these Jamaicans and put them down with their crew and have them as like security. Because like I said, back in the days, the Jamaicans did not play no games. They had machetes and they were real violent dudes. And to be honest, they were the best kind of security to have. Like for instance, they would have a spot on the block selling crack doing real good. But sometimes dudes, stick-up kids come through and rob the spot. Now, back in those times, the Jamaicans would have spots on the same blocks as these crack spots, but the Jamaicans would be selling weed. So when the stick-up kids came through to hit the crack spot, they would not think that the Jamaicans is down with these dudes. And a lot of stick-up kids came through and tried to do the wrong things, and the Jamaicans ran out with the machetes and tore dudes up. Get in the comments if you from New York. A lot of stick-up kids came through blocks to stick up crack spots and had no idea the Jamaican dudes had the drop on them. And them dudes would come out with them machetes and all that, and a lot of dudes got tore up and sent back with a missing arm and all of that, cut up real bad behind not knowing that the Jamaicans is down with these dudes. All the drug kingpins of the 1980s had dudes around them that would turn your lights off at the snapping of a finger. Pappy Mason was a crazy Jamaican dude that would kill you in broad daylight and laugh about it. In Harlem, Rich Porter and AZ had Alpo. If you violated Rich or A or stole or anything like that, Alpo would kill you and would not even think about it. When Alpo went to DC and he was getting all that money out there, he had Wayne Perry. Wayne Perry was a crazy looking Jamaican dude that would kill you in any environment and would walk away laughing about it. And that's why a lot of dudes that was getting a whole lot of money in the drug game was putting those Jamaicans down with their team because they knew them Jamaicans did not care about human life. These dudes would behead dudes and then put the joint in a box and send it to your mother's house. This is the type of time they was on. So when Pappy Mason began doing security for Fat Cat, he got kinda lit. His name started to ring bells. People in the streets knew that if this dude Pappy Mason came for you, it was a wrap. So Pappy Mason began to recruit dudes under him, and he had a little crew of dudes that was dangerous and violent and crazy just like him. Imagine 5 Pappy Masons. That's what his little crew was like, and they was called the Bebos. Now, in return for being his security, Fat Cat was taking good care of these guys. They were well paid, but Fat Cat was giving Pappy Mason drugs on consignment. Pappy would take those drugs and give it to the dudes that was now in his crew and have his dudes selling for him. So now you got Pappy got his thing going on. He's making some more money. And also for Fat Cat, he's making his money, and it's a faster way to move the drugs. But on July 29th, 1985, Fat Cat got knocked at one of his drug spots during a drug raid. When Fat Cat got before a judge at Central Booking, he was hit with a $75,000 bail. Fat Cat paid the $75,000 and was released. Now remember, Fat Cat was on parole. He still owed the system 16 and a half years for those 2 armed robberies. You see, the technology back then wasn't as fast as it is today. Today, you can get arrested while you on parole. And when you get downtown to the judge, they're going to know you on parole. And they're going to contact the parole officer themselves and hold you until the PO says you can release him. Or sometimes the PO will say release him, but when you come in to report to your PO, sometimes they will rearrest you on the spot. And this is dependent on the charge. Fat Cat violated parole and was sent to Rikers Island. His parole officer's name that violated him was Brian Rooney. Fat Cat is now sitting inside the Tombs or Rikers Island or wherever they sent him. And this dude is going crazy in there because he's like, yo, this man just violated me. I ain't have no drugs on me. I don't care what they found inside the spot. I ain't have nothing on me. He felt like he shouldn't have been violated. He got all this money out there on the street. He can't keep an eye on what's going on. It ain't no way I'm getting out of here. He knew he gotta go back and finish the rest of that time. Fat Cat knew 16 and a half years. When I get out of here, this whole thing that's going on right now with all this money and all that is gonna be over with. It's gonna be 2005 when I get out of here. I ain't even get a chance to really enjoy this. And when you look at the drug game back in the 80s, it ain't really get lit like that until like 86, 87, 88. I think those was the best years of the drug game. If you from that era, get in the comments and let's talk about this. 86, 87, 88. Fat Cat knew I'm gonna miss out on all of that. So what Fat Cat did was he called to the streets and he told his security, Pappy Mason and the Bebos, when y'all see that dude, put hands on him. On October 10th, 1985, Fat Cat's parole officer, Brian Rooney, was shot and killed. Now, Pappy Mason knew somebody that knew Brian Rooney, and what he did was he had the dude contact Brian Rooney, and I think he had him to meet him somewhere downtown. Weeks later, Pappy Mason and the dude Perry gets arrested for the shooting. Now, immediately, the dude Perry gets in the precinct, and he starts to say that Fat Cat and Pappy Mason set the whole thing up. One day in 1987, Fat Cat's wife, who went by the name Mousy, was driving her car. She got pulled over by 2 men pretending to be police. They told her that they were investigating what happened to parole officer Brian Rooney. Mousy was arrested, then blindfolded and put into the back of a van in broad daylight in Long Island. She was taken to an abandoned building in Brooklyn. The kidnappers contacted Mousie's family and demanded money and drugs and said that if they didn't pay it, that Mousie's family would never see her again. When Fat Cat called home from jail and found out what happened, he refused to pay the money and drugs, but he said that he would give the kidnappers jewelry and cars, but the kidnappers didn't want that. A $77,000 ransom was paid to the kidnappers by Mousie's mother and father. Mousie's mother and father also let the police know about what was going on. So when the transaction with the drop-off money went down, she had the police sitting somewhere watching the whole thing. On May 24th, 1987, Mousie was released by the kidnappers. A man by the name of King Allah was arrested for Mousie's kidnapping. Remember that dude Perry? Well, he's in jail making plans to testify against Fat Cat and Pappy Mason about the murder of parole officer Brian Rooney. Fat Cat once again calls the streets of Queens from jail and tells his dudes, yo, when y'all see that dude Perry's father, clap him. On December 4th, 1987, Maurice Bellamy, Perry's father, was shot and killed. Now, once again, from prison, Fat Cat orders another hit. This time, he orders the hit on a girl he was messing with named Maisha. This girl also had a baby by Fat Cat. While Fat Cat was in jail, he had the girl on the street doing business for him. But the drugs that she was getting to do business with, she was giving it to a guy she was messing with. And then in return, telling Fat Cat and his dudes on the street that she got robbed. When Fat Cat found out everything that Maisha was doing, he had dudes on the street to find Maisha, and she was shot and killed. In 1988, Fat Cat's wife, Mousie, was at home with her family when they received a knock at the door by someone posing as UPS and said that Mousie had a package. When Mousie opened up the package, inside of it was a dead rat and 3 bullets with her name and her children's names engraved in each bullet. The person that had the package sent to Mousie's house was that dude King Allah. He was trying to scare Mousie into not testifying against him in the kidnapping case. Weeks after the package was delivered to Mousie's house, Fat Cat's mother's house was firebombed when a car rolled up and someone threw a Molotov cocktail through the living room window. Fat Cat's 51-year-old sister was killed in the firebombing. She was in a wheelchair. Now, in another situation, there was a police officer who was guarding the house of a witness on a block in Queens. This particular block had the Bebos on this block selling drugs. And this guy that the police was guarding, he kept complaining to the cops about the dudes being outside selling drugs, the loud music, and the dudes on the block wanted to get rid of this old dude. So they were sending death threats to the guy and doing all kinds of stuff. And there was a police officer that was sitting in front of the guy's house, to make sure that this dude was safe because he had received death threats. And also, the block was a drug block. So the dealers on the block felt like, if this cop is sitting here all the time, we can't make no money here. Pappy Mason calls the block from jail, and the dudes that's hustling on the block tells him, yo, it's a cop sitting on the block all the time. We can't get no money. We can't move nothing. Pappy Mason tells the dudes, yo, handle the situation. A couple of nights later, while the police officer was sitting in his patrol car in front of the witness's house, 3 dudes walked up to the police car and knocked on the window and got the officer's attention and opened fire on the vehicle, killing the officer. That shooting sparked one of the biggest drug raids New York City had ever seen. The feds knew that Fat Cat and Pappy Mason was involved in this. They knew that it was their people on the streets that was doing this. So what the feds did was they started wiretapping the phones of the people that Fat Cat and Pappy Mason was calling from jail. And the place that Fat Cat was calling the most was his sister's house, Viola. Now, when the feds began monitoring Viola's phone calls with Fat Cat, the feds said that what was funny about Viola was Every time she would receive a phone call from Fat Cat and other people, the first thing she would say out of her mouth was, "Yo, don't mention nothing about nothing. I think my phone is tapped." And the person she'd be on the phone with would go, "Okay, cool." And then she would turn right around and go, "Yeah, so and so just dropped that off. And I gave him this amount of drugs and he took it to so and so." The feds found out the names of the dealers, where the drugs was going, how much money they was making, and everything. The feds said that Viola would start running off at the mouth so bad that while she would be talking, people would knock on the door and she would put the phone down, go open the door for the person, let the person inside the house, and then be talking freely, real loud to the dealer inside the house about how much she giving him and everything. They said Viola's mouth, by her talking so much on the phone, she gave away Fat Cat's whole drug empire while he was in prison. While the feds' real intention of tapping the phones was to find out who killed the cop and the parole officer. So now, on top of two bodies, the feds now have a drug conspiracy kingpin case that they wasn't even looking for, thanks to Fat Cat's big mouth sister, Viola. Viola's big mouth also sealed the fate of Pappy Mason. In a recorded phone call that she had with Fat Cat, she told Fat Cat on the phone, "I don't know why Pappy Mason had that done to that cop." So now they have who had the police officer killed. Now they got all this information from her talking on the phone. The crazy part is, like they said, she gave up all that information, and at the beginning of every phone call, she would say, "Don't say nothing about nothing. I think my phone is tapped." Viola Nichols was given 10 years in federal prison for her role in Fat Cat's drug empire. Fat Cat's mother was also arrested in the federal raid. Fat Cat decided to cooperate with the feds so his mother would be released. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols cooperated with the feds. I think his mother served about 2 years before she was released. Fat Cat received 40 years in prison for his role in his drug empire. Pappy Mason received life in prison for his role in setting up the murder of the police officer. The dudes that was on the street that did the murder, they all got life in prison as well. On February 5th, 2022, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols was released from state prison into federal custody. Now, I'm not sure where Fat Cat is, but I believe he was released to some sort of federal halfway house, the same way Alpa was when he first came home. I mean, with the type of stuff that he was charged with, I'm pretty sure they did him the same way they did Alpo, by giving him a new name and, relocating him somewhere else. Welcome home to Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. Give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's your man Supreme. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of The Real Rap Show, and this was episode 45 of The Real Rap Show, the story of Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. Y'all stay safe out there. Real rap.